Well, hello retro game players. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Marcus. We're going to be applying a custom vinyl overlay of the Starship Enterprise from Star Trek onto this X-Arcade tank stick that is mounted to my custom main cocktail system. So if you've watched some of the previous videos, you've seen this thing in action. And basically, you know, I'm a huge fan of the tank stick overlays. Big fan. I think they're really well made. They work well with a lot of emulators, and I use one for my home consoles, Dreamcast, PS2, PS3, just regular PC. I also have a mirror image of this hard drive inside where I record, and so I just did Time Killers, which is basically, you know, a MAME game from this image, and I use an X-Arcade tank stick for that as well, which I've also shown previously. And that's basically the same thing. It's an overlay of like fighting characters, I think from Street Fighter 2, and I think like Batman's on there and stuff, and it's just kind of cool. But I did apply that, and I had a couple weird issues with it when I applied. One of them is that these holes are cut for, you know, varying manufacturing differences on the X-Arcade. So if the button's in a little bit, you know, different spot or whatever. But basically when I went to apply it, it wasn't quite fitting right. So what I did was I removed the buttons, put the vinyl down, and then put the buttons back down, and then that worked really well. So it looked really nice, and I've really enjoyed it since. But with this, if you watched the previous video, this thing is bolted in here. I mean, it's got like, you know, brackets all over the place, which is great because it's really firm. It holds in here really well. You can get kind of violent with it, and it holds in. But it's going to be tricky putting this on without removing it. So I got to pull this out to get this thing on. So that's what we're going to do. I'm also trying to make this thing look pretty cool, and I thought the Starship Enterprise would be a good one. One other reason is that there's a blacklight installed here, and the blacklight's been illuminating the trackball and player 1 and 2 start, and I think that this will look really cool with the blacklight. So hopefully it does, and that's my goal. You'll also see that I've got a little sheet here that I've kind of printed up, and basically this is the instructions for people to come and play. And well, why would I do that? Because this is going to be at the Portland Retro Gaming Expo, October 17th and 18th. I've got a booth, and I'll be having this thing sitting there. People can come by and play it. I'm also going to have a tiny little projector, put an image on the back wall of my booth, so people can watch it kind of in big screen there too. And I'll also be selling a lot of duplicate games and systems, including like a Virtual Boy, you know, tons of other games. Just stuff that I've had around that I have picked up on accident or with big gaming lots. So I'm not going to be selling them for eBay prices. I'm going to be selling them for a good deal. So stop on by if you're looking for anything, you know, come check it out. And also play the cocktail machine here. You know, it's got 3,400 games, Dragon's Lair, Centipede, you know, Street Fighter 2, whatever. Yeah, so that's what I'm doing. I'm just going to apply this, make it look a little spiffier. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so after removing about 50 freaking screws, you can see all the holes up top where all the brackets went, and that's okay. So this overlay is going to go over that, and then I'll actually put screws through it, or I might fold it up. We'll see once I get it inside. If I fold it up, then there's a chance I could reuse it later on down the road. So I'll try that, but it may not work. But yeah, basically it's removed. I just need to kind of wipe it down a little bit and just, you know, make sure I try and get all the excess dust off of it. And I'm gonna try and apply it now and see how it works. And if it works, like in other words, if the buttons all fit. Because like I said, the other one that I applied required me, you know, to like actually remove these buttons and put them back on top of the vinyl overlay. So that's the only thing that could happen. And if that's the case, then what I'll do is I'll flip over this X Arcade, take the back off, and adjust any button that needs to be put on top of the vinyl. So, all right, so we're gonna go ahead, make sure I got that. All right, we're gonna go ahead and put this on. It's kind of like a giant sticker, so. Also, these holes, the button holes, do not come off as easy as you would like them to, which is kind of a bummer. All right, let's see how we can get it on here. It's a good thing it's pretty removable because this process is pretty crazy. It does not just want to fit right out of the box at all. I mean, in fact, this one, I can tell, is going to require most of the buttons to be removed, if not all of them. Also, it's weird, this one actually seems like smaller than the other one that I had. You can see on the bottom it's not covering up as much as I was hoping. Yeah, so even though, I mean, you can see how far off those are, these buttons. Yeah, I don't know, the only thing I can do now is to basically remove the buttons and then place it down. It will stretch a little, but even the center area seems kind of strange to me. Yeah, you know, it's strange, but it doesn't seem to be fitting very well at all. I mean, there's a lot of misalignment. It looks generally okay, but the buttons are like totally sideways. So I'm just gonna have to take the back cover off and, you know, just do my best, I guess, to try and get it to, I mean, I can't even get the light. Like, there's the light. I can't even get that to look right. Okay, so I have loosened every single possible part that might interfere with centering this. So there's nothing else to do except for try and get this thing to fit on here. And honestly, it's weird. It just doesn't seem like it's the same size as the last one that I did. The last one I did, you know, had some issues, but this has been something else. Trying to get this on, so see if I can just get it to somewhat center. You can see I can push up the buttons here so they fall into place a little better. mess with everything just because it's so strange. I'm not sure why on this one, but it is. I think once I get all the buttons up and over this, it should be a little easier. There's also a weird wrinkle right here, which I don't know if it's going to come out. I might have to like lay a heavy book on it for a couple weeks or something. Trying to get it to flatten out. Most of the other air bubbles should dissipate. This is just so bad though. I mean, this is like so out of alignment. I can't even believe that somebody didn't make this to spec, you know. It's either X Arcade or Rec Room Masters, you know. Obviously if it's X Arcade it doesn't really matter, because you wouldn't know it unless you were putting something like this on. Super weird that it would be this far off, but whatever. It'll look fine once it's done. People aren't really going to be staring at this. You know, they're going to be hopefully looking at the game. But you can see this one spot right here. It's kind of annoying. I have had another wrinkle on the other one that I did, and it did eventually kind of come out. So I'm wondering if that'll happen. You know, that's just a big, that's a big one right there. Generally, it's okay. I mean, it's not what I would consider perfect. I would like to see it come to the left a little. I don't know if I can do that. Well, it's a little more centered. One thing that I noticed though is that when you roll the joysticks, it pulls up the vinyl. So I don't know if you can see that, but when you push up, it folds that up. So this will have to be either removed, which would be really stupid, or some kind of spacer put in there, which is unfortunate because the whole point of this little thing is to keep, you know, junk from falling in there because there's a hole. So I either have to like get a shorter one or somehow elevate it up a little bit, which I don't know how I'm going to do that. Otherwise, when you move it, could potentially tear that vinyl at some point. This one too. It's funny though, the other X Arcade I had didn't have this problem, and so I think that's just really weird, you know. I mean, I don't know. My guess is that this one just must not have been manufactured the same way or something, you know. And like this fold, like it's way more hardcore than it was before. So anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and try and, I guess, tighten up the buttons on it and get that to where it's at least on there, you know. Tighten down the trackball and stuff like that. I'm not sure what I'm gonna do about the joysticks yet, but I gotta figure something out about that, because that won't fly, you know. Okay, so I got the back completely tightened up, and I did figure out a fix for this little protector thing. Basically, I just flipped it over because it's slightly tapered on one side. So now when you move it, it does not go up over the vinyl, which is nice. So yeah, all the buttons are now secure. Everything's, you know, buttoned back down. And one thing I figured out is on these folds that you can use a heat gun to try and remove it. So I'm gonna try that here. It's not necessarily easy, but it works. So one thing that's weird is that it really starts to get extra wrinkly when you do it because it gets so warm. But but it does sort of work. All right, so I managed to get pretty much all of the wrinkles out. The big one that was here is gone. You know, there's just some little ones left over, and hopefully, you know, my experience is that a lot of that will kind of go away over time. The oxygen kind of just dissipates, and you know, the little bubbles hopefully will disappear. So that's what I'm hoping. If not, I'll, you know, put some more touch up. But yeah, I mean, generally it looks pretty good. It's definitely not as good as the other one that I applied, and it definitely was a lot more difficult. But yeah, and then like I said, these are flipped over. So now that these are flipped over, it doesn't go up under the vinyl, which is nice, but it seems, again, strange how poorly it fits. But anyway, so now I'm gonna go ahead and put it back together and mount it in the machine. Wow, well, I'm exhausted. That was a lot more work than I thought it was going to be. Not only removing this from the computer, but mostly putting the vinyl, you know, overlay on it and aligning it, using the heat gun multiple times to try and get some big wrinkles out, you know, that I did not do. It like came like that. But, you know, I know this is the second one I've installed, as I said. The first one wasn't perfect either, but it was a lot easier. I only had to move like 4 buttons or something, you know, maybe 5. It was a lot easier, but on this one, I mean, I just did them all because I could tell it was going to be off almost on every single piece of hardware, which you can see. So, I mean, I think that if someone sat down, they wouldn't notice, and it wouldn't be such a big deal unless they're really obsessive, you know. But because I put it on there, I can tell that it's really crooked in a lot of spots. I mean, even the light doesn't match up with the hole, you know. So I would have a hard time recommending this, I think, you know. I mean, all in all, it was cut generally okay. The first one was much better. The second one took me a long time to mess with, and it really required taking a lot of the X-Arcade hardware apart and then just clamping it all back down around the vinyl, and that took a long time. And even then, it wasn't perfect. You can still see, you know, these weird little wrinkles and things, you know. I will say that I like it with the black light, and it looks pretty cool. So yeah, with all that said, I don't know. I'd have a hard time recommending it, but it still does look cool. I'm glad it's on there. And of course, guess what? I have another to install. I actually have a Dragon's Lair one that I'm going to be putting on a Dragon's Lair cabinet, and so I'm going to film that, and it's coming up. And so anyway, even though I'm cursing this, the first one went pretty good, so hopefully, I guess I have a 50-50 chance of it working really, you know, generally smoothly or being really difficult. So hopefully it works out. But until that video, you guys keep it retro. And of course, that would mean come, you know, check out the Portland Retro Gaming Expo if you're around. Stop by, play this machine, and say hi and stuff. But if not, you know, you keep it retro by working on whatever project you think is only going to take, you know, 30 minutes and takes you 2 hours. Go and do that. But yeah, I'll see you guys next time later on.